Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. May I start this evening by extending a very warm welcome to you, our audience, and to our distinguished guests, and to our fellow members of Engineers Ireland, to our panelists for the evening, and to our President of Engineers Ireland, Maurice Buckley. My name is Rowan O'Callaghan. I'm the chairperson of Engineers Ireland here in the Northwest region. And I suppose on behalf of both ourselves here in the Northwest region and also the Donegal region, it's a real pleasure and a great honour to welcome you all to this evening's event. This is the second in a series of 4 panel discussions on the impact of Brexit. The first event, some of you may have attended, was hosted by the Northeast region. It was on March 27th, and it focused on the new EU-UK trade and cooperation agreements and supports. So this evening, we're looking at the impact not only of Brexit, but also the pandemic on engineering in the Northwest. And we hope you'll enjoy a very interesting conversation. To introduce this evening's session, I'd like to invite President of Engineers Ireland, Maurice Buckley, to say a few words and I suppose to set the scene for this evening's discussion. And then Maurice will hand it back to me and I suppose go through a few bits of housekeeping before we introduce your panel for this evening. So I'll hand you over to Maurice.
Thanks very much, Rowan. Great to be here tonight. And look, as President of Engineers Ireland, I want to just add to what Rowan said and really welcome everybody to the event and to thank the Northwest and the Donegal region and Sligo IT for hosting and organising this tonight. I'm probably responsible for this series of lectures because last June at the AGM of Engineers Ireland, when I was elected president, I set down a challenge to all the members of our 25,000 strong organisation, and that was, can we as engineers do as much as possible, or what can we do to tackle the 2 mega challenges really that Ireland was facing in 2020 and 2021. One was the pandemic, obviously. I thought we would be long out of it by now, but we're not, but there is at least an end in sight with the vaccines. And the second was dealing with Brexit. At that stage, June last year, we weren't quite sure what was going to happen at the end of the year. Was there going to be an agreement? Was there going to be a crash out? And now we're still, I think, trying to come to terms with the consequences. So 2 huge challenges, and look forward to the discussion tonight as to how they impact on this particular region in the northwest of Ireland and indeed on the economy in general. So it is super. I have some experience myself back in the 1990s and noughties running a small business, not a million miles away from the region in Roscommon, where I am tonight, calling in from there. And like so many other small businesses, when we were big enough to go beyond the local market, jumped on a plane to Birmingham and a plane to Manchester, and the UK is such an easy market. And I always remember it was a printing business. 5 or 6 years later, when we were exporting to many different markets, I always asked myself, why did I do that? Actually, the UK wasn't, in objective terms, the most attractive market for those printed products we made, but it was the easiest market because it was so close, same language, same culture. And I think now with Brexit, there's a lot of challenges, but there's also opportunities. And I think if I was in that situation now, I probably would have looked at Scandinavia or the Benelux or Germany or France and said, hey, look, core EU countries, that maybe is a better starting place for the business. And I think it would have been a better decision. And I hope that many Irish businesses will make that leap now. So there's lots of opportunities as well as challenges. And I think without further ado, I'm going to hand back to Rowan and look forward to discussion about how we might tackle some of these.
Great, thanks very much, Maurice. Okay, before we go any further, just a couple of small housekeeping bits. Just in terms of questions for this evening, questions are very welcome and they can be submitted at any time during tonight's discussion. Just please note to use the Q&A function as opposed to the chat function. So don't use the chat function for your questions, use the Q&A facility. If appropriate, you can include the name of the panelist who you're addressing the question to, that Chris or Brendan or Maurice, whatever whatever. And as I said, you can add questions throughout the discussion. And our MC for this evening, Brendan, may bring the questions up in discussion, or we may try and answer them at the end. So that brings me on to our panel. So we have some distinguished guests joining us this evening. Firstly, we have Brendan McCormack, who is the president of our local third level institution, IT Sligo. Brendan will be your MC for this evening. So joining Brendan, then we have three panelists. You've already met Maurice Buckley. He's the chairman of the OPW and current president of Engineers Ireland. And he's very kindly joined our panel actually at short notice. Thanks, Maurice. We have Dr. Chris O'Malley, who is Vice President of Research, Innovation and Engagement at IT Sligo. You're welcome, Chris. And also we have Brendan Dolan, who is the CEO of Isopod, which is a mobile clean room manufacturer based here in Sligo as well. So you're welcome, Brendan. We had another panelist lined up, Brian Kelly of Tata Consulting Services, who unfortunately was unable to join us, and he extends his apologies. So just, I suppose, on my own behalf and on behalf of the two regions of Engineers Ireland, the Northwest and Donegal, I'd just like to personally thank our panelists for agreeing to participate this evening. We much appreciate it. And I suppose without further ado, I'll hand you over to our MC, Brendan McCormack.
Thanks, Rowan. And I think just the topic for this evening, the impact of Brexit and the pandemic on engineering in the Northwest, is very relevant to the Northwest. You know, of all the regions of Ireland, I think the Northwest and the Northeast are probably feeling it. Let's call it a lot more than Cork would be feeling it at the moment. So I think, you know, it's important that we consider this. Well, I think also, as Maurice very rightly said, there's opportunities as well as challenges. You know, and just to throw out two areas, online business obviously has increased for some people who are in that business, and courier businesses have increased. So, you know, it's not all the downside from the pandemic or Brexit for that matter. So what I might do is just ask the panelists briefly to give a little bio on themselves, you know, to people can understand where you're coming from. And then we might start with a few questions, you know, around the table. That's okay. So Maurice, you've kind of outlined a bit of your background. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Well, maybe just my current role in the OPW. I suppose there's two connections to Brexit. One, we were very involved, we were responsible for building the infrastructure at Dublin Airport, Dublin Port and Rosslare to deal with Brexit traffic. So that's one aspect. And the other is in terms of remote working. The OPW looks after accommodation for all of the civil service and the big government bodies. So a huge topic at the moment is what is going to be the impact of remote working post-COVID on accommodation standards. So just a couple of relevant points.
Thanks. Brendan, maybe do you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Brendan Dolan, so CEO of Isopod. So we're a modular clean room company. We've seen the need for additional space and for rapid space in the Northwest, and then they quickly expanded it basically all over Ireland and into Europe now at this stage, and we're currently looking at wider fields as well. So we, I suppose, pretty unique product, and the fact that it's standalone, so it's a box, so it's a clean room in a box. We also, when I say clean room, we do a number of other things like cold rooms, freezers. We do ICUs for hospitals, all that kind of stuff. So anything with controlled environments is where we kind of specialize in.
Right. So, and you're pretty much around the region then, and you're both sides of the border.
Very much so. We recently just opened a facility in Northern Ireland, so a manufacturing facility for Isopod. So Isopod UK is now based in Northern Ireland, so we're just after kicking off with that, and that is mainly to service UK and I suppose Greater Europe.
Thanks, Brendan. Chris, your words yourself, please.
Okay, I suppose my career started unconventionally enough in that I became the youngest member of the European Parliament back in the days when the Single European Market legislation was being enacted. I then joined British Telecom, so that was my first exposure to engineering, and I had to do, you know, telecoms network management 101. But I led the development of the company's European market strategy at the time when it was beginning to enter that market. And since then, I've worked in higher education institutions in Ireland, England, and Wales, focusing mainly on strategic change and external engagement. So in IT Sligo, some of the initiatives that are relevant to this debate include we've been given funding from Enterprise Ireland to develop a border region manufacturing cluster. And, you know, we're hoping to promote sharing of best practice and innovation with as many companies as are interested in joining. Secondly, we've got funding to set up a research and innovation centre focused on Industry 4.0 and particularly the digitization of manufacturing supply chains. And also to mention that I'm chairing the board of another EI-funded new centre, which is run by W8 in Manorhamilton. It's going to be called FutureCast, and it's focusing on the digitization of construction and quarrying industries. So, you know, it's good to see those kind of developments happening in the region.
Thanks for that, Chris. And I might start off maybe with you, Brendan. You know, and you've talked a bit about your business there. But what is your experience of the impact of Brexit on working across the border in the UK and Ireland?
I suppose the biggest impact for us is delays, the custom delays, stuff like that. We're finding a major issue with importing stuff. We don't export small components, so we're not hit by delays with customs, but definitely a massive impact on the import. And for instance, it would have been northern products that would have been taking 4 to 6 weeks, and it's now taking in excess of 2 months to get stuff here, maybe 10 weeks in some cases, to get stuff here. And recently we waited up to 4 months for lead time for products coming across, just because we weren't Brexit ready, from customs point of view. So I find that difficult at the moment.
Right. And in terms of dealing with Europe, then, have you found that things have changed? I mean, are you managing to get around the UK and do business more directly with Europe?
Yeah, we're managing that, but we find that the language barrier is probably an issue. When you go outside, because we're kind of reliant on going through UK for a lot of stuff. And now we're finding that we were not ready from a language point of view, and we're finding that a little bit of a struggle. Just to get somebody in who can speak the languages of different. So we're reliant probably on the UK. It's small things that you don't realize until it happens, that you have a knock-on effect on you, and it becomes expensive then because you have to employ somebody to do that for you and all the kind of stuff. And that's I suppose where, from a commercial point of view, that's where it's becoming a bit of a pain for us,
Right. Maurice, could you say a few words about the impact on procurement, special resources, contractors, things like that, because you mentioned some of the big projects you've been involved with in the past, and is Brexit beginning to impact on any of those, or the pandemic?
Yeah, well, we certainly expect that it will, and the first signs are there. The first Brexit lecture last week in the Northeast had people from NSAI, where I worked in the past, and we're focusing in on certification and products, particularly the construction products regulation, and Irish companies who are maybe been using a UK notified body and now have to realign all their certifications so that they can continue to trade. So that's a huge issue. But specifically on the procurement, in the construction industry particularly, and of course OPW works on the big infrastructural projects, unfortunately Irish contractors have tended to source material almost exclusively in the UK. I mean, there's a distance of travel, maybe they're familiar with the construction technology. So steel, for example, is a huge issue at the moment, and Brendan might have a comment on that as well, because a lot of it is refined and just distributed to the UK. It's not even made in the UK. It's very often Chinese steel, but just once it goes through the UK, then you're into, if there's any work at all done, you're into tariffs and you're into blockages and delays. So that has to resolve itself. A simple example, something like 90% of hygiene equipment, toilet equipment, and so on, bathroom equipment in Ireland comes from the UK manufacturers. So we're just hoping at the moment that the big contractors have been working for the last couple of years and have got their new lines of supply open from European countries, or else got the customs and everything all lined up correctly for the UK. We think this will have a short-term impact on construction inflation. So two things have happened in the last year. With COVID, the market has been very quiet because construction sites have been closed. So therefore prices have gone down, prices on tenders have gone down. But now the extra cost of paying duty on materials coming in from the UK is being reflected in tender prices. And it's bananas because a lot of those materials are made in Europe, are made in Asia, and it's just lethargy really that we're buying them through UK distributors, and it's just going to take a year or two for people to fully realize the implications and fully resource supply from European bases. But when they do, you know, there's a great chance that new technologies, more sustainable systems in buildings, insulation systems and so on, from France, Germany, Holland, the European countries, which are standard there and we're maybe a little bit behind in Ireland. We'd be very optimistic that over 3 or 4 years, the construction industry in Ireland will start pulling the more modern, innovative materials. They'll get them certified through Irish or European notified bodies, and that there will actually be a wider range of more innovative technology available then on the Irish market. Okay,
and just on that issue of the notified bodies, is there a lack of them or shortage of them?
Yeah, well, I mean, the NSAI, National Standards Authority of Ireland, is the only, until very recently, was the only notified body in Ireland for a lot of the specialised products, particularly construction products, medical devices, other areas. There's been a mad rush in the last 3 or 4 years for UK notified bodies to open up an office in Dublin, maybe, or in Ireland, and get certification, get registered so that they could continue to provide services. So I think there's going to be a washout over the next couple of years that you probably have more notified bodies coming in from Europe. The existing ones will manage to kind of provide a patched up service for a number of years. And eventually companies, you know, it's a competitive market. Companies will see where they're getting the best services, the best price, and it'll settle down. But it's unsettled at the moment. And the effect is everybody's just shutting shop. So you try and do what you did last year and the year before. And that's what I would worry about is innovation. So you might have been developing a new technology. You might have been saying, okay, I'll get this certified through my UK notified body. Now you've got to develop a relationship with somebody else. And you just say, well, maybe I'll leave it for 12 months. And that's obviously bad for the whole economy. But I think it'll be very short term. It'll build up and there will be a sufficient choice of notified bodies in Ireland to support the market. I'm confident of that.
Yeah. And I presume the opportunities for those who get certified sooner will be out in the market quicker, you know, with their innovative products. So
yeah, and the companies that find a direct channel of importing, build up relationships with continental European distributors. As Brendan said, language is the main difficulty, and language shouldn't be a difficulty now. I mean, with translation services and everything else, but just in the short term it is. But those who move quick, prices are lower anyway. I mean, for years we've been paying 5 or 10% markup on prices just because the big European suppliers would sell to the UK, the big market, and they'd treat Ireland just as the island off an island.
Yes.
We were dealt with exclusively by the UK distributor and paid more for the privilege. So when this washes through,
yes.
There will be a huge cost advantage and a logistical advantage to dealing directly with Europe. And it'll be more expensive to deal from a UK distributor because if there's any work at all done on the product as it passes through the UK, there will be a duty to be paid on that.
Sure.
So a lot of changes, a lot of opportunities there, but in the short term, I think it'll have a negative impact until the thing settles down.
Right. Thanks, Maurice. Chris, you've worked a fair bit with the manufacturing sector, you know, and particularly in the Northwest. Can you talk a bit about the impact on the wider engineering industry?
Yeah, well, the first point is I think that Maurice was talking about the uncertainty we had up until last December, and unfortunately, a lot of that uncertainty remains because at the heart of the agreement was the ambiguity of Northern Ireland being part of both the UK market and the EU market, without really describing how that can happen without undermining the rules of either. So that there's a certain amount of creative ambiguity which is necessary there, but it means that we still have a lot of uncertainty how it's going to play out. Just to give one example, GDPR, the legislation, is written in relatively ambiguous terms. And up until now, court cases established precedent anywhere in the EU has to be taken into account. But following Brexit, UK courts will treat it just as UK legislation that's been brought over, and will then only look at precedent set in the UK courts, which probably courts in Northern Ireland will do. And then in the Republic, we'll have to follow what courts in the rest of Europe are doing. So over time, we may see divergence in the practice. And at some point, you may get a decision from Europe that there's a sufficient divergence that companies with presence in both North and South can't share customer data with each other, the two parts of the company. So that's just one example of the kind of impact on companies that can emerge, with the growing divergence that we can expect to develop over time. So, just keeping an eye on that is going to be one challenge. I think the point was made about the pandemic, and I think a lot of companies, particularly in the pharmaceuticals industry, but in other ones, one lesson they have drawn from the pandemic is that they're going to have to review their whole supply chain arrangements. And we're seeing those companies looking at their tier ones, reducing the number of tier one suppliers. Now, for a lot of companies in Ireland who are currently supplying to those companies, they may find that they have to do so through a company in Germany who is the only tier one supplier left. So, that's an example of the consequences that are washing through. We're really facing not just a double crisis, a triple crisis, because the third one is climate change, which we've kind of lost sight of, and yet we're faced with massive impact around the middle of this century if we don't get moving quickly on it. So I think in practical terms, the points about supply chain management and remote working have been made. And for manufacturing, we have supply chains crisscrossing the border all over the place. For example, a company like Multihog in Donegal is getting in the cabs for its vehicles from Lisburn. And those kind of connections are there everywhere. So the impact of Brexit potentially on those supply chains could be very significant. We really have to keep an eye on what's happening there. And in terms of remote working, I think there is an opportunity, as has been said, to attract people to live in the Northwest and Donegal while working for companies elsewhere. But equally, I think the technology that supports remote working is also, we're also going to see that being developed. So for example, the use of AR and VR and emulation software, where companies are serving markets remotely. So that if you're working with a company somewhere else, you want to jointly work on the design of a new product or help them to repair and service a product, being able to use that technology to do so, or automating warehouses, or automating the aspects of the delivery of products, all helps to make supply chains more resilient in the face of pandemics. So we can see these kind of technologies getting a further boost.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. And maybe just back to you, Brendan, you made a point earlier about the language and suddenly the challenge you have in dealing with non-English speaking countries. Although I must say Europe is fairly fluent in English in general, but maybe just a broader question, what do you think needs to be done to generate the talent that's required to work in the post-pandemic era?
I think it's
we've all been working. Yes.
Yeah, I think it'll take a while to resolve itself, but I think it's from an academic point of view, it needs to be addressed probably, at college level. We need to be looking at what's happening now in regards to languages and saying, are we ready for that? Because most of the European countries are probably good English speakers, but we're not very good at speaking 10 different languages, and I suppose we need to address that in some way, shape, or form from an academic point of view.
Yeah, well, just on that, I mean, we would find as educators that as students, not many students want to take up languages.
Exactly,
Particularly in technical areas like engineering, and when you put forward the curriculum and if it's going to be, structures or mechanics of materials versus French, even the engineering academics would kind of say, well, there's a priority here. So it is a challenge, and I'm not saying it's the right way to go, but trying to get languages embedded in the curriculum is difficult when there's so many competing technologies that need to be taught or techniques.
Yeah, and I suppose when you mention France, they're our closest neighbours at this stage, probably in the for the EU are very one of the closest anyway, and they're probably one of the main sources of export and import. So I think we need to definitely get more fluent people. Fluent, you know.
But I just said that there is a fashion in terms of what people want to study. And I can remember back in the 1990s, all in interest in languages, because the word went out that everybody speaks English, as Brendan said, which was very much a simplification of the picture. And there was also a trend politically that we were going to get closer to both Britain and the US. So the idea was you didn't really need to learn languages. Now, we also have this idea in the country that we somehow don't have the language gene. The Dutch basically can speak maybe 2 or 3 other languages as well. The reason they do, though, is they can hardly travel 100 miles before they have to speak another language. What drives people's interest and willingness to learn a language is the need to do it. And once people realize that to do business with the rest of Europe, it's a good idea to learn a language, I think we can expect to see a growth in the interest again, and we will find it easier then to get people engaged.
Yeah, it's probably with breaking down the barriers. You know, it's like any education. It's, you know, you kind of pick and choose the ones you want to learn, but if you find that it's probably going to be commercially useful to you going forward, then you know that barrier may become easier to break down, and maybe easier from an academic point of view to get it across. You know.
And one possibility that we could help perhaps is we bring in a number of Erasmus students from other European countries every year, and where they're involved in areas like business or engineering. The idea of giving them maybe a work placement with a company that wants to have a student that speaks a relevant language, working with them and maybe acting as their go-between for making contacts in that market. It's something worth thinking about.
Yeah, we get in a number of CVs currently, you know, from other European countries. We're currently getting a number of. Don't know why that is, but in the last while, you know, there's a lot of interest in our business, and we're getting a lot of CVs in, and I just see, looking at them, a lot of these guys, you know, are fluent in a lot of different languages, where a lot of the Irish guys, and including myself, is not fluent, or you know, most languages apart from Irish and English, and I'm not fluent in Irish either. But just saying, like, it seems to be further developed in different countries, and we seem to be lagging behind a little bit on it. You know, there is, I suppose we're talking all the negatives about Brexit, like, you know, there is a lot of positives there as well from you know, from business point of view, and we're seeing our business has really grown, you know, because of Brexit, you know, so we can take from both sides. I suppose it's not all negative.
Yeah, I think, as Morris said, we'll be forced to come out of our comfort zone of just doing the easy thing when it comes to other cultures.
Yeah.
Just say, from an education point of view, obviously, you know, we're in higher education, but there's also further education. There's the trades areas, you know, and the skill-based learning, which is equally important, particularly to manufacturing, and also the in-company training, you know, be it quality assurance or some particular regulatory affairs or things like that needs to be done. So just to make the point that it's not just, say, for higher education to solve the training or the education piece. I think it's for us all to work out where the training needs to occur and how it will be delivered. I mean, just to put in context, we've over 4,500 students online anyway, you know, pre-pandemic. And the point being that they're all in companies working on shift or whatever they're doing, and they're upskilling, and they need to upskill for themselves, but also for their company's sake. So there needs to be that kind of a flexibility, I suppose, in, you know, where the education. So, you know, Brendan, if you need somebody educated and they're located in Belfast, how do we get the education to them? Are they located in Brussels? So I think that's an important aspect too, is the access to education.
Yeah. And that is very much improved.
I mean, you have such a good reputation in IT Sligo as kind of a leader in remote learning and in the Irish context. That's going to be so important now, and it's going to be a bit of a role model for remote business also. So it's great. Chris, you mentioned about like the location and the difficulties in the border and the different interpretation of GDPR and so on across the two legal jurisdictions. But there must be a great advantage in the Donegal and Sligo regions through well, I suppose it depends on how Northern Ireland pans out. I mean, assuming that the protocol settles down and that the border remains completely open, you would imagine that there's going to be an enormous amount of inward investment into Northern Ireland, as it will be the only place that has full access to the UK and to the European market. And if that happens, okay, that some of that might be at the expense of investment in the south, but I think more likely it'll be at the expense of investment in the UK, and it would create great opportunities, I would have thought, for companies, especially SME companies in this.
Well, that's the outcome we have to all hope for and work for. And it's great to see that even though imports from the UK have fallen 57% so far this year. They have doubled from Northern Ireland. And so that could be an augury of, so that means it's good to be in the border region if that cross-border trade is growing like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And actually,
mentioned last week with the northeast region as well, with the Louth, Monaghan, Cavan, they really are in the same boat.
Yeah, and Chris, maybe you referred to your political background as an MEP. What is your read on the situation, the political situation in Northern Ireland, and how might that develop?
Well, I suppose, as I was saying, because it's a very delicate, ambiguous settlement, and I say nobody has really worked out how do you ensure that the same region is both in the UK market and the EU market. The potential danger is, and what we're seeing with all this unrest, is some people are drawing the conclusion we're being shut out from the mainland British market. So really the question is, can the operations of the regulations on the ground be done to minimize that impact and that visibility in order to maintain a stable arrangement? So that's the main threat to the settlement, as it were, is that lack of consensus that's potentially at the heart of the Northern Ireland executive on this particular settlement of the Brexit issue. So we just have to hope that ways are found forward that don't frighten the horses excessively. But the risk is definitely there.
Of course, it's very difficult at the moment. The regulations are being interpreted in a very technocratic way in Northern Ireland, but also in the South. Everybody, there are hundreds of customs officers and SPS controls and food and agricultural products, and everybody's trying to find their way and see what is the appropriate level of protection, because there's all these theoretical risks. But as somebody said, I mean, how dangerous is it to bring a few slices of ham packed in a plastic container from London to Belfast? I mean, the real risk is almost zero. But yes, people have to find a way there to just find a balance through the controls. It's the same in the South. Throw in the COVID pandemic and the restrictions on transport. Like the trucking is only at a fraction of its normal levels for this time of the year. Is that because of Brexit or is that because of COVID? It's not quite clear yet, but there definitely is a shift in goods movement from the transit through the UK to direct traffic now, from Rosslare to the continent. That's grown hugely, and from Dublin to the continent it's grown hugely. So it's not just in Northern Ireland. It's probably going to take a year or two for this to settle down and to the advantages to truly emerge.
Yeah, and I think a big part of it will be played by the British government's policy direction. If they are intent on, in their view, doing a bonfire of the regulations and lessening standards across a whole range of areas, that's going to put more pressure on keeping those regulatory barriers high, and that will cause more problems for us.
And on another level also, we see actually quite good relations, say, between Letterkenny and Derry, and that kind of cross-border, all along the border, people live on one side of the border and work on the other side of the border. And I suppose that's a question, I suppose, for that community, whatever side of the border they're on, is how do we keep that open, and that that things like tariffs don't change the mindset and set up the barriers in the sense of I'm not going to cross the border to go to a job or
Yeah, part of our view on this is that if trade barriers were to become, higher, which thankfully so far they haven't between North and South, but if they were to, that we should make extra effort, all the more effort, to keep our contacts going with our counterparts in the North, to try and keep that connection and communication going.
Yeah. Just back on the languages, I see a question coming in here about, the fact that we, by and large, we're not a foreign language speaking group of people. Is there an opportunity for translators? Do we need to be looking at trying to build a body of translators or a business in that area?
It's definitely a short-term opportunity, but whether it's a long-term or not, as Mars was saying, it'll probably adopt over a period of time. We'll probably be able to manage it better. But short-term, definitely, I'd see a need for for translators or somebody who's maybe fluent in different languages. You know,
yeah. I think the big issue here is psychological on our part. We say we're not a foreign language speaking group of people. A lot of that is due to the way we learned any languages in school, without the follow through of ever becoming fluent in speaking it. But once you do get the experience of learning a language and speaking it, the first one, then learning the next one gets easier, and the one after that's even easier again. So, but it's all a matter of convincing ourselves we can do it. You don't have to have some special gene in order to be able to speak another language. You know, people do it when they have to, and once we get the idea to our heads that, yeah, even if only you learn enough of a language when you're visiting business people in other countries that can speak English, but you say enough of the few phrases to impress them that you've made an effort, that could be a business advantage to you relative to the people who didn't make the effort.
I wonder though, language is certainly very important, but I just wonder how critical it is in this day and age. I mean, just technically in terms of reading and understanding stuff, there's so many electronic translation systems available. I think it's much more the business culture.
It's the personal connections,
or buy from France. Okay, the language is one thing, and like you say, Chris, you have to maybe have enough to gain a mutual respect. You can't be relying on English everywhere. But it's much more important to understand the differences in the legal system, trading practice, culture, the way they work, the way they socialize. And I think that's, for years, it's been so easy for Irish people to engage with UK suppliers or UK customers because the culture is so akin to our own. And I think that's the difference. And that's, do we need translators? Yes, we do. But I think much more we might need culture interpreters, if you like, or business. And I know Enterprise Ireland are trying to really develop this, especially for the smaller companies, is that, maybe supports from the offices in those countries, those Central European countries, and supports here so that companies considering trading and developing relationships just have a little bit more help to get over that sort of barrier. Then once you're up and running, you're up and running, but it's just to break into that particular culture. I think the advice is, don't do a scattergun approach of trying to build up relationships all over the European continent. Maybe pick one area like the Benelux, for example, where they really do have a phenomenal level of English language capability and very little, they're not as pretentious as the French, or not, I don't mean pretentious, but they're not as anxious for you to speak their language as the French or the Spanish might be. But Benelux, Scandinavia as well, language is not an issue, but the different trading practice is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another difference between the UK markets and many other markets in Europe is the UK has always traditionally been a price-conscious market, where they still believe in finding the bargain, and it means that if you're looking to get a good margin on your product, it's more difficult. Whereas in other markets, they're more willing to accept that if you offer a quality product, that they pay more for it. Have we lost Brendan?
He was obviously quite shocked by that comment there, Chris.
Yeah, I think Brendan's frozen there. Just another question that's come in with regards to, I think Mara said it was not known if the shift away from land bridge is Brexit or COVID related. Is it fair to say that anecdotal evidence is mostly Brexit due to delays?
Well, it's hard to make it really is hard to make a call on it. The level of freight is since January has been about 20 or 30% of the normal level, and there've been two things happening. First of all, instead of the freight predominantly going through the UK to Central Europe, it's been going directly. Much more has been going directly from Dublin to Rotterdam, and from Rosslare to several different new connections have opened up. So that's all going. But then the overall level of freight is down as well because of the difficulties, just the concerns about the virus with the truckers traveling, having to do tests on both sides of the journey, the delays are caused with that. You know, when you have a link like Dover-Calais and the amount of trucks that go through that, it's not an insignificant thing to stop and get a jab in the arm or well, it's not a vaccination, but a COVID test. It does take a lot of time, and you're talking about big 10-meter, 40-foot trailers. You know, they have to park somewhere for the half an hour that they're doing that. It is just a logistical nightmare, and more people then using air freight. And of course, at the turn of the year, and I think it still hasn't washed out, a lot of companies, a lot of the big suppliers pre-stocked, so they brought in a lot of warehoused a lot of goods before the end of the year, and they're now running down that stock. So all of these factors are still at play. But there are a lot of tests and controls, there's no doubt about it. And there are a lot of companies that, despite all the preparation since 2016, 5 years, still are struggling with what is the tariff, what is the product designation, what are the customs rules, particularly around food products or products where being processed in different countries. What exactly are the rules there? And they're finding it quite tricky.
Brendan, I'm going to hand it back to you. I'll step away again, okay?
I appreciate it, Michael. Thanks for covering for me.
No problem.
As we say up here in the Northwest, many are cold, but few are frozen. Just a question has come in for Chris here. Why is your perception that British standards, particularly in engineering, would be lesser than the EN standards, especially given the now they've been harmonised?
Yeah, in fairness, I wasn't really talking about construction or engineering. It was certainly more about consumer products, but that's the consumer market in the UK has that reputation.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Maurice, the question that, and I'm not sure how relevant it is, but you know, with your work with the OPW and you're doing obviously a lot of flood prevention activities, is there any implication there for cross-border, you know, works that are going on, you know, maybe in the river area, and maybe not, but just...
Yeah, it's a good question. Relatively little, I would say. Okay, so up to now, Ireland and the UK would have been working to the European Floods Directive and the European Water Directive, but I think the big factor in every jurisdiction is climate change, and the big factor on the island of Ireland is rising sea levels. So I don't think it matters whether you're a part of the EU or not. It will be the same engineering techniques, the same challenges, the same economic challenges. I mean, it is foreseen that the sea level will rise by over 1 meter by the end of this century. And when you think of 1 meter, that is a lot of our golf courses, a lot of our beaches, but not alone the amenities, but a lot of our cities. Our cities are built around the coast, so there'll be phenomenal investment needed that will really, I mean, at the moment there's a program of €1 billion in flood defences over the next 10 years, and that's a large program. But I think the investment needed to deal with coastal erosion will be huge by comparison, and that problem will be similar for Belfast and for Derry as it is for Limerick and Cork and Dublin, Galway. They're all coastal cities, and we'll have to deal with it. But you just remind me of, to just come back to the point of sustainability and climate change. Chris made it earlier on that we're dealing with 3 challenges, not 2, the pandemic, Brexit, but also climate change. And I should have said that at the very beginning from an Engineers Ireland perspective. When we set the challenge of what can engineering do to help lead us out of COVID and lead us out of the Brexit changes, that was all in the context of the global climate change challenge. And as members of the call will know, Engineers Ireland declared a climate and biodiversity emergency last year. And so very much the focus now is how to deal with that. And what are the impacts? I mean, remote working, remote education, as you mentioned, like that is huge in terms of our impact on the environment. If we are spending less time in traffic jams going in and out of cities to get to work, and we can be working closer to where we live, the impact on transport will be phenomenally positive. Maybe the impact on heating might be less so, because instead of switching off the heat while we're at work during the day, it'll still be on because we're working there, and it may not be as efficient. All these things have to be worked through, but there's fabulous engineering opportunities, and it will be up to engineers around the country to find solutions to that. Car sharing apps, charging points, more charging points for electric vehicles, and so on. Better heating systems for housing, co-working areas in towns and villages, where people can maybe psychologically get away from home but still be working locally, so a 5 minutes instead of a 2-hour commute. So everything we're talking about tonight, I think, has to be put in the context, and Chris is right to raise it, of sustainability and our response to climate change.
Yeah, and I think in addition to the examples you gave there, Maurice, there's also the opportunity for the construction industry, not only in terms of higher standards of energy efficiency in new buildings, but also it's going to be a need to retrofit the entire housing stock in due course. So that should give you a shot in the arm to both those developing innovative construction technology, but to the industry as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is a really difficult one from a policy perspective, because the heating and the built infrastructure costs consumes a huge amount of energy. So you do need to retrofit houses, and a lot of stock is very old in public buildings, but it's very expensive to do so. So where do you get the best bang for your buck? Are you better off investing, which is the current situation, in maybe renewable energy, which will give you a quicker return? But as time goes by, we're going to have to tackle those more difficult problems. And the good news is that the EU, in terms of its stimulus funding for the post-Brexit reality, the 700 or 800 billion program that's been put out, that is very much linked to sustainability investment. So quite a bit of that, I think, will go into energy upgrading and for housing and public buildings.
Yeah, and grants to people, the house owners, to get it done.
Yeah, hopefully.
A question's come in there, just an interesting one. Has any work been done, or should work be done on what we're currently importing from Europe or the UK? And could we not be making some of these products in Ireland? Examples being given, PPE, that comes from China, or wind turbines from Holland. So little products, but many of them are big products, costly products. Why aren't we making these in Ireland, or why isn't the government maybe supporting such manufacture?
I think they are, really, and I think there is great opportunity. Globalization has maybe will continue, but we've kind of taken a deep breath for the moment when we realize in the middle of a pandemic, it's not that easy bring materials from all around the world. So there is actually a big advantage to having local supply. Throw in Brexit then, and the breakup of some of the UK supply chains that used to be there. There are definitely opportunities and big opportunities, which I think are being supported. It's all a question of time. It takes time to realize these changes.
And it's worth mentioning as well, Maurice, when you were talking about, and Brendan was also talking about the products that are brought in through the UK traditionally from elsewhere, that there could be an opportunity for some business people in Ireland to step into that and be the distributor of those products to the rest of the EU.
Maybe just when we're talking about opportunities there, to explore a bit about remote working, and maybe it's more to do with the pandemic, but we've all learned very quickly to work remotely, and even when our system freezes, we can kind of get on with it. But is there an opportunity, particularly for the Northwest? Here we are, a reasonably rural, populations dispersed region, but we're very attractive as a place to live and raise a family in. And we've certainly seen with some of the companies in Sligo that they've chosen to come here because of the environment, and they've chosen not to go to Dublin, I suppose, conversely. And maybe there's an opportunity for us to attract businesses out of the cities into our region more.
Yeah, I think that definitely is, and that's been seen. Now with the pandemic more so than Brexit, people don't want to be in Dublin anymore. They want to come and they want to work for companies in the Northwest, and I think there's definitely major change towards that, and I think we should flag it and try and raise awareness that we're here and the Northwest is here, and we have the ability to offer jobs to these people, and we should try and create a wider range of opportunities for people that's working in Dublin and try and get them back in here to a better standard of life.
And when multinationals are looking at where to locate, they will typically say how big a population in, you know, a half an hour or an hour's commute of that place, and is it enough for us to get in a suitably skilled workforce? But I think with the growing pattern of remote working, they could afford to look a bit further afield, because not all of their workers need to be coming into the office every day anymore. So if you locate in Sligo, you might have somebody who is most of the time living in Belfast or somewhere, but who could come over from time to time. And if they're even just a part of the workforce, that could be enough.
And it's a psychological change too. I mean, once we realize we can work from home or from our communities more, then the question arises, how, as you said there, Brendan, how attractive are those communities to live in? So do I have healthcare? Do I have good education? Do I have good shops? If we're still physically shopping locally. And the OPW, I mean, we've two areas. You mentioned earlier flood relief schemes, and they're to protect against floods, obviously. But all of a sudden, there's a huge interest now in walkways, cycleways, building those flood relief schemes into the public realm in the towns that they're passing through. Because suddenly, I think chambers of commerce and groups in towns and villages are saying, whoa, hold on a minute now. All our kids who used to go to Dublin and Galway and maybe Sligo for third level education and never come back, they might actually choose to live here and do that remotely. So we better make this an attractive place to live. The same is happening with monuments and heritage sites. So obviously the monuments that the OPW looked after are all over the country. They're not located necessarily near big centres of population. So, for example, in Roscommon, where I live, there's a 13th century castle, and suddenly now that's much more important, not just for the very light level of international tourism we might ever have got in Roscommon, but for staycationing, and much more importantly, for people who want to live at home and work from home, and you know their family is visiting, they want somewhere to visit on a Sunday afternoon. And so the mindset of people in rural areas is changing quite a lot. It's a very exciting time, and for engineers, we have to make all this happen, and we have to get all this infrastructure balanced so that it'll work. And there's a huge opportunity here, I think, for Engineers Ireland and all engineers to respond to this.
It'll probably also put some pressure back on companies, and even say ourselves, we've about 600 employees, and we can envisage that when the pandemic is over and people return to work, there'll be a percentage of our staff who will want to say, well, hang on a second, I've worked quite well for the last year or so from home, I want to keep doing this, go make it happen for me, type of thing, in a positive way. But there will be a challenge to, the question is, can everybody work from home, or is there some people that need to be in a certain location or in an office to work?
Well, I suppose skill sets are probably one set of people that can't really work from home. You need the hands-on skill sets, the panel, the mechanical, electrical guys, the panel guys. There's a certain element of people there that really can't work from home. But if they're in the building industry or in the that industry, so they have to be at work. So I suppose there is an area there that needs to be considered.
Probably all of manufacturing, Brendan, is quite challenging.
It's very challenging.
Yeah. And even your design staff would probably have to be close to the production areas and keep that cultural link.
Yeah, and especially for people who haven't actually met each other yet. You've been working for the last year, and they haven't actually have a face-to-face conversation. I don't even know, apart from teams calls and that kind of stuff. So that's a little bit of a barrier at the moment, and you don't know how they'll react when they do actually get back into an office and work together.
Yes. On the other hand, we are. Sorry, Maurice, go ahead.
I was going to say, it really is the big unknown. How will this settle down once the immediate pandemic is over, once vaccinations are in place and we have the choice to work from home or back to the office, and it's blended working. Blended working will be very hard to manage. And there's a big debate at the moment, very important for the Northwest and Donegal, is what model will turn out to be the case? Will it be that I am living in Donegal all the time and working all the time from there, maybe once a week, once a month, going to my company in Dublin, and that's fine if that model works. More likely model, though, is that employers will want staff that maybe work 1 day, 2 days, 3 days from home, and they want them to be in the office for a certain amount of time to build the culture. And there will still be opportunities for regions like the Northwest in that scenario, but a little bit less than the scenario of permanently working from home.
And yet, on the other hand, we're talking about Industry 4.0, and our companies need to get more automated and more managed remotely, just as physical plants. So there's kind of that opportunity as well to accelerate that drive.
Yeah, so more of the work in manufacturing will be around the design of processes and the purchasing of plant, and setting up the machinery, and the amount of, like, Ireland is the second lowest in Europe in terms of number of robots per manufacturing sector workforce. So we can expect that to grow very rapidly in the next 10 years. So the number of tasks that are undertaken by hand will reduce, and those other tasks then of managing that process, more of that can be done remotely.
Questions come in here. Is Brexit and the pandemic having equally challenging issues, or are they equally challenging or different challenges?
You currently see the one is blaming the other, so it's hard to know. To be honest with you, from a supply chain point of view, couriers are saying, "Oh, it's the pandemic," and it's Brexit, and blaming everything, and one is being passed on to the other. So it's hard to figure it out, to see. Somebody needs to sort it out and see which one. And until the pandemic's over, we won't really see the real effect of Brexit, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that the pandemic has obviously the heavier short-term impact.
Yeah.
But I think Brexit will have the more substantive long-term impact as long as it continues.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
A question maybe directly to you, Maurice, is what arrangements have Engineers Ireland for recognition of qualifications in Northern Ireland and the UK?
Yeah, good question. So there are quite a number of international engineering bodies, and accords between those bodies. So they're still in place. So that there are mutual recognition programs between Engineers Ireland and corresponding engineering bodies all around the world. So it's a little bit easier within the EU, but it shouldn't change that much. And obviously we'd have an existing relationship with, I think, all of the UK bodies. So there'll be a smooth transition, and there might be a little bit more bureaucracy to go through, and regular cross-examination of standards on both sides. But it'll be no different to recognizing a degree from Australia, New Zealand, the US, and those processes are already in place. So it'll be manageable, but there'll be a bit of work involved.
Right. And just another technical question come in. There's a significant issue with UK modular buildings not compliant with Part L of the building regulations. I don't know if anybody has any experience with that. Maybe it's
Part L. Is that to do with the external cladding and Grenfell towers and so on?
Well, that's certainly an issue. I suppose it's just a design. I don't have any particular knowledge there, Brendan, but there are differences already, very light differences between building regulations in Ireland and the UK that'd be similar, and a lot of the building regulations and technical standards in Ireland would, at this point in time, refer to British standards, BS standards. So that's all changing very quickly. That can't apply anymore. And these divergences, like presumably that example, are beginning to come to the surface, and they will be more and more a feature of a divergence, I think, of technical standards. As Chris said, the divergence might be very slow in technical areas. It might be much more rapid in terms of food standards and so on, but it will happen nonetheless, which is why it's very important for Irish companies to become very familiar with continental European standards.
Yes, yeah. And I'm sure there's people listening who have probably direct experience of this impacting their businesses somewhere or another. Maybe just a question on a different tack. And Maurice, you mentioned about all the work you've done on ports and so on, and it leads us into the fishing industry, and what impact. And there's engineering obviously involved in the marine traffic and businesses. And you talk about the reduction in freight in ports, but from a fishing industry point of view, is there any changes? Are we going to be selling less fish to the UK and more to the Spanish? Or
Yeah, not one I'd have any particular level of expertise in, Brendan, but it is extraordinary. The negotiations last year on the trade agreement were held up so long with the fisheries, the fish quota issue, and now you're finding that the UK fishermen who got these quotas for shellfish, for example, in Scotland, suddenly realised that the market for their product is actually the EU. So it's a bit of a very victory in a way, because the markets rule at the end of the day, and this has got to settle down. So I know in the UK, the fisheries industry there is having a big problem. It wasn't the victory they thought, but I'm not familiar with the situation for the Irish exporters, but that has changed or not.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, no, just interested on the kind of the level of traffic going in and out of ports that might be related to the fishing sector rather than transport. But no, it's just an interesting angle. Brendan, just from your point of view, I'd say, you mentioned clean rooms. You're probably dealing with a lot of American-based companies, are you?
Well, yeah, we're dealing with a lot of actually a fair few English companies as well who are actually coming across here, jumping across to set up here. So we're lucky in that we can set up pods and do it on a small scale, and they can do their lab work and the trial work here within Europe, which means that their certification and that can be done up front. So I suppose you touched on that earlier. So from our point of view, we're lucky. There's a lot of this, and we are dealing with some American companies, but mostly we're dealing with English companies coming across at this stage. It's the initial impact has been from those guys. They're jumping across to get set up here.
To get set up to get a European base, is there an EU base?
Get the EU base, and I suppose the fact that we can build clean rooms at a small scale and we can scale up to whatever scale that they grow to, it's not a massive investment for them. So instead of coming in and building, stick building, which costs you 20 million or 40 million or whatever it may be, we can do it for a lot less, and we can do it very, very quickly. So time to market for those guys in Europe, it's good, so they can trade through here. So we're finding that has been a bonus to our business.
And that adds to the manufacturing R&D base in the country, which is very welcome.
Yeah.
Just and maybe another general question, but it has an Engineers Ireland flavour on it, has come in. Has Engineers Ireland got a role in facilitating Irish companies to meet the challenges and opportunities of Brexit and the pandemic? Now, obviously, this discussion here is something that Engineers Ireland is doing to try and bring out the issues and make the wider engineering community aware of them. But what else do you think could be done?
Well, yeah, I mean, as you say, that is behind this challenge, is to see how engineers can assist to the greatest extent possible, and whether Engineers Ireland as a body representing engineers can kind of marshal that effort, if you like. I mean, I think in terms of the pandemic, we've seen it with a very quick turnaround of making PPE equipment and rolling out vaccination centres and so on. So there's a certain engineering involved there. But in terms of Brexit, I think it could be huge, because if we're looking at changing suppliers, if Brendan needs, a new component or new system from somewhere in Europe that he hasn't used before, you're going to need engineering expertise to test that, to adapt your product, to see how to best use it, maybe go through some certification that's needed. And you might have the expertise within your business to do that, but a lot of companies won't. So I think there's market there for consultancies and support businesses to develop to very quickly open up new supply chains and get new materials, new installation systems. Sustainability is very closely linked to innovation. Responding to a crisis like this changes the ground rules very quickly. And that means changes in the way we do things, and changes usually mean engineering solutions. So Engineers Ireland would like to try and help resource that and help kind of bring the different solutions together. So we're, as I say, that is the purpose of this exercise, and it will be a topic, I think, for the next year or two, how best to rally the engineering profession in Ireland to address these two challenges.
Yes, yeah, thanks, Ross. And maybe back to you, Brendan. You referred to earlier about moving into European markets and the language challenge.
Yeah.
Can you give us maybe a sense of how much of your business you see moving away from the UK and into mainland Europe?
I possibly 30-40% at this stage, I'd say moving across into Europe.
Right. So you've taken that out of the UK.
Yeah, pretty much so. Yeah.
Right.
A lot of that has come back in here into Ireland. So back to Mars's point, we're finding that there's actual suppliers here that can give us stuff just the same as stuff we're buying out of France or we're buying out of Belgium or we're buying components from outside. We see Irish companies ramping up now to be able to deliver that here, and probably at a fairly competitive rate, and so that's the kind of we're moving to. So we're going more local suppliers, and we're giving them more business.
Right.
We're trying to grow the business, between us. We're trying to, as Connors, we ramp up, they ramp up. So.
Yeah. And then have you any sense, Brendan, if your other competitors, but in Europe, are doing less business in the UK for the same reason, that they're sticking to UK markets or EU markets rather than UK markets?
Well, I suppose what we're seeing a lot of the bigger pharmaceutical and bigger medical device companies. They're now gearing towards us, because we're probably in the EU and we have the capability of doing stuff. So we see a lot of it swinging towards us because we're local. Whereas before this, they were buying from the UK and buying in, and probably see there's been a barrier now. So more so with warranties and everything else that comes along with the product. The same, type of product as ours, and somebody had referred to the L, to the L value earlier. So stuff like that, they're probably feeling more confident in buying now within the EU, and somebody like us who can do it right beside them is probably, it takes away that fear factor from them. So we're finding our business is growing because of that as well.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and sorry, my earlier question about the American companies, what I was trying to ask there was, have they reacted negatively to Brexit in the sense that are they a bit more wary about expanding or doing more business in Ireland because, worried about your supply chain of products?
I don't see it yet anyway. No, I don't see. I mean, the ones we're dealing with they seem to be expanding the whole time. The American companies based here seem to be very much expanding, and they have big plans for expanding. And that could be as a result of the pandemic, or I don't know exactly what the knock on is, but it's definitely they don't seem to be afraid to expand in Ireland. It's definitely not.
Yeah, well, certainly I think the likes of the IDA have been doing a lot of very good work in continuing to attract particularly the biopharma type companies.
Yeah, they have. Yeah,
Ireland. That's helped.
Yeah, the IDA and Inters Ireland, in fairness, both are. Yes. Great supports for any company, and they advertise they're really advertising the small companies in Ireland now and getting them out there to say that these guys are capable of doing the work as well. If you don't have to rely on the UK suppliers or whoever, that the smaller startup companies are capable of doing as well. So yeah, it's been a great help.
I think Enterprise Ireland are helping to identify markets outside the UK.
Very much so, yeah, very much so. Yeah.
What will be very important, I think, in that context, Brendan, especially smaller companies, is the type of local cluster that you mentioned earlier, Chris. Manufacturing support clusters or centres of expertise. We discussed this in the Northeast last week as well. It's more important than ever to share our knowledge and share our experience. It's great to hear the success you're having, Brendan, and that this is giving you a lot of immediate opportunities. And the more people can help each other to learn the tricks as to how to take advantage of the change situation, the better. So I think these clusters and networks, and indeed the third level colleges like Sligo IT, being able to support startup business and fledgling business, will be very critical. And maybe that's where Engineers Ireland can link in. It's hard to link to individual companies.
Very welcome, yeah.
Organized like that, but maybe we can link to these networks.
Yeah, there's a lot of support networks that that goes with the business that's growing. So it is great, and to try and I think a forum, an Engineers Ireland forum on that, to get more support into the west of Ireland for companies starting up, and that'd be good. So we're very much about generating jobs in the west of Ireland, and that's my key focus, because obviously got educated in the west of Ireland, so that's where I want to bring jobs to Sligo, and I'm always looking for opportunities to do that. So, and I think there is loads of opportunities there. It's just a matter of getting more groups involved in it, and having more forums on their ideas, and bringing that, developing small ideas and seeing where they go. So I think it's a good opportunity.
When you look at the way clusters have developed elsewhere in Europe, and Ireland is very much, and the Enterprise Ireland will agree to this. In fact, they're telling us that we are very underdeveloped relative to the rest of Europe in terms of business clusters. And when you look at how the most developed ones are operating, they're doing more than sharing good practice. they're actually undertaking joint actions, whether it be, you know, setting up joint training, for example, or whether it be going into overseas markets together, so that they can act as, you know, a larger entity rather than small ones. And particularly when there are complex challenges like getting to know, you know, to master culture of another country. If there's one agent acting for a number of companies, that they can share the cost between them, that makes it more doable. So there's a whole range of ways in which companies can act together through the trust they can build up by being in a cluster. And that has to be part of the goal.
Yeah.
What we're also finding in the cluster area, and there's a group, for example, in the medical technologies area, is that mutual support. Like one person has an expertise in one area, another company has an expertise in another area. They might be competing with each other locally, but they're not competing with each other in the German market, for example. So between them, they're stronger and more robust to approach those markets. But I think that kind of supply chain strength would be very important coming from the West.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the mention earlier of translators, or, you know, just kind of a service to introduce a cluster of companies to a particular market, like you say, Chris. So there are opportunities there, and it's a case for us, I suppose, as facilitators, be we an IT or a Engineers Ireland body, or, you know, to find a way to act as a catalyst for these changes, to make sure that they happen, positive changes happen as quickly as possible.
And just say something we're trying to do, we're not just IT Sligo anymore, we are working with Letterkenny Institute of Technology and GMIT to become a technological university. And the reason for that is we want to get critical mass, that here we are in the west of Ireland, and if we have a very strong university with over 20,000 students, we feel that will help provide the talent pool, including with languages, you know, that's needed out there. You know, and I mean that seriously, that it's our role is to listen to what the industry in our region needs and provide that. And while IT Sligo on its own, for example, might not be able to provide engineering courses with languages, but across the TU, we feel that that's the type of thing we could do. Yeah. And particularly with our online capability, that is not located, so we can have somebody from Belmullet attending our classes, you know, without having to travel every day to a campus.
Yeah. Of course, it is a little bit more long-term, but one of the core roles that Engineers Ireland does is the accreditation of engineering courses. So, you know, you mentioned earlier about apprenticeships, so we're doing a lot more now in level 6 and level 7 courses, and even in the primary engineering degrees, they've got to change very, very quickly to respond to all these changes: digitization, Industry 4.0, robotics, cobotics, additive manufacturing, and even just the business education that a modern day engineer needs to supplement the technical education. So we're trying to move apace with all the universities and colleges. Everybody's trying to anticipate what the market will need in 5 or 10 years. And I think Brexit and the pandemic have made that anticipation much more challenging, much more difficult to do. But if we get it right, we really can have an advantage over our peers in other countries.
Yeah, and when we think about education, it's traditionally people think in terms of when you leave school and you go to a college, that's where it happens. But in fact, for us, virtually half our business is actually engaging with people working in companies. So that, you know, it used to be the thought that when you got an engineering degree, you learned everything you needed to know to be an engineer and you were sent out into the world. But of course, technology changes so fast that you can't keep with that model. So, you know, it is really important that what we do is flexible and accessible as possible. And I think micro-credentials is an area that we're going to see growth of, where you just take on a, you know, bite-sized piece of learning, which is, for a lot of people is all they can afford the time to do it for stages in their career.
I think as a graduate, if you learn anything, you learn that you learn very little and you know very little as an engineer. And it's only when you get out into the real world and have to deal with the issues, and particularly with other people, is when you begin to learn, I think, the real how engineering works. Just a question that's come in, and I think the answer is yes, but do you think there would be an appetite for postgraduate courses in business, technical language courses? You know, I think, the comment I think comes from the point of view that, yes, your undergraduate engineering course might need to have all the technical stuff in it, but maybe there's an opportunity for a postgraduate course in business and languages.
I think picking up on your point earlier, Brendan, there definitely is a need there to improve our skills. So
definitely a short-term need, and that will develop obviously into a long-term need. So yeah, I think yes is the answer.
I'm just conscious of time, and maybe just to kind of have a bit of a wrap-up session on the positives. We talked about the opportunities, in various areas, but maybe just to go around the table and what do people think, are the opportunities that we could exploit as people in business and industry, and particularly in engineering in Ireland?
Yeah, I suppose for me, I think there's a great opportunity in research and development in biologics and stuff like that we're not up to speed in. I think, and I suppose I'm saying that because I'm involved in that business, and it's probably easy for me to say that, but I do see, because of vaccines and because of all this stuff that needs to be developed in, short-term vaccines and long-term vaccines, for a number of illnesses. Gene cell therapy is becoming a big thing, worldwide, and we're beginning to move into that in Ireland as well, and see it taken over. So I think there's an opportunity here for research and development labs in the west of Ireland, and bringing those skill sets here, and they'll bring their own support mechanisms with them. So as corners, postgraduate degrees now. When you get out of that, you start up a small business. Next thing, you have more people coming along, along with you. So it's about developing that, I think, in the west of Ireland. I think it's a great opportunity here because we have the skill sets, and we're letting them go to Dublin and to all over places. We just need to entice them back and, build a hub here for ourselves, to say that we can do this. And I think we're very, very capable of doing this. I think it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, just interestingly, I'm involved with Nibert in Dublin, and they are building a cell and gene therapy facility up there. But at the time we talked to them about potentially locating that outside of Dublin, but obviously they have their facility up there, their plant and their training facility. But we do a lot of the validation of programs with them, and again, Engineers Ireland would have seen some of those going through the validation process. So there is an opportunity, and if you have suggestions, Brendan, we could talk with ourselves or with Nibert about what courses are needed.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and I think what Brendan was saying there about the development of plants and R&D in the West, I think that this is one of the biggest opportunities we have now, because we've come from a situation where the innovation base in the Northwest is behind the rest of the country in terms of resources and centres and so on. So we have a chance to address that now and build a critical mass of R&D activity that will attract more people to come and work in that area, and to develop a name for this to be a place where you can do it.
Yeah, very much agree, yeah.
Yeah, I suppose, Brendan, like in terms of the opportunities, I think in the border counties and the Northwest, they're really, we said it earlier on, but to me, it is the biggest opportunity is to link into Northern Ireland. I think, you've got to hope that the political sensitivities and the economic sensitivities about the protocol and everything get sorted very quickly. But there's a huge opportunity for Northern Ireland economically with inward investment, and there'll be a massive spin-off, I think, for the border counties from the Brexit scenario. So as you said earlier, you've got to build and maintain those cross-border linkages. On the pandemic side then, remote working and just our familiarity with, the word webinars, like a webinar was a very occasional thing a year ago. Now it is kind of a daily opportunity. I'm sure Michael might pick up in closing, Michael, from the Donegal region, that, if you're in Sligo or Donegal, to try and attend even an Engineers Ireland event in Ballsbridge in Dublin is a nightmare. It's almost an overnight to do it, or you're dealing with a very poor recording. Now you have equal access, whether you're living in Ballsbridge or Banbridge or anywhere in the country, or the remotest part of Kerry or Donegal, and we can retain that advantage, so that you have, as you said, the benefits of living in a very attractive area in the region. You have access to work. You can work remotely, but you also have access to learning and just seminars and interactions like what Engineers Ireland offer, and I'm sure lots of other bodies. So I think there'll be a huge change, and maybe the impact will be a bigger delta, if you like, for Donegal and Sligo and let's say more rural, more remote counties of Ireland than it will be for Dublin or Cork, where there'll be an impact there as well, but maybe not as spectacular as here.
Yes, yeah. No, thanks. I think that gives us a positive note to finish on, that there are real opportunities up here, and it's really for us to do it for ourselves and find those opportunities and build them. So I'd like to maybe just wrap up by thanking our speakers, Brendan, Morris and Chris, on my behalf. You made my job very easy because you kept talking to the issues and you had plenty of ideas and suggestions. So very much appreciate that. And also to thank, behind the scenes, John Gorman, George Hadda, Rowan O'Callaghan, and Maureen, who set this event up for us. So very much appreciate that. So that note, I'd like to hand back to Michael Bassett. You'd like to say a few words?
Yes, thanks very much, Brendan. And I'll introduce myself this time rather than jumping straight into the hot seat. Michael Bassett, the chair of the Donegal region of Engineers Ireland. Yeah, just as Morris was saying, I think there's real opportunity, and the whole pandemic thing, I think, it's really helped companies realize the benefits of technology and how massive savings can be made in using the likes of Zoom and Teams, where you don't have to attend a meeting in London for half an hour, and it takes up your maybe a day and a half of work. When literally you can just jump onto a meeting and you're there and you're out again, you're straight back into the work. So there definitely have been massive opportunities that have come from this, and I think we need to keep looking at the positive silver lining, because it is tough for everybody at the moment, and you can get drawn into the gloom and doom of everything. But there are positives that have come from it, and I think going forwards it makes things much more efficient. But I think this evening has been fantastic. I just want to thank our panelists, Brendan Dolan from Isopod Sligo. Brendan, thanks a million. You can all Google him, isopod.ie, and have a good look at his website there and see what he's all about. We've got Dr. Chris O'Malley, Vice President of Research, Innovation Engagement at IT Sligo. Dr. Brennan McCormick, MC for tonight. Thanks, Brendan. You kept things moving really, really well until you froze, but sure. Again, technology has its negatives. And President of IT Sligo. So that was brilliant, Brendan. Thanks very much. We've got our own Morris Buckley, President of Engineers Ireland, and obviously chair of OPW. So that was great. And Maren behind all the works for Engineers Ireland, doing the hosting for the Zoom platform and helping us through in the regions here. And lastly, well, not lastly, but I want to say thanks to Rowan O'Callaghan and his committee in the Northwest region in collaborating with ourselves in the Donegal region in organising this event. And of course, lastly, yourselves, everyone who's attended the event this evening, thanks a million for sort of dedicating slightly over an hour of your time. I'm sure on a beautiful evening like that, it was a tough call tonight, but thanks very much for everyone who came on board. I think there were 55 in attendance at one stage. So yeah, so thanks very much. And just lastly, the next Brexit event is coming up on the 29th of April at the same time, 7 p.m. It'll be the impact of Brexit on cross-border procurement and supply chains. So I think it'll be a good event. So if people want to log into that, I think you should be getting an email through from Engineers Ireland with regards to that. And they said, obviously it's open to non-members as well. So if you jump onto the Engineers Ireland website, you should be able to find the link for it there. And for anybody who misses the events are being broadcast on Engineers Ireland and the Engineers TV section. So you can jump on that. I know everyone's busy. So yeah, so that's it, folks. Thanks very much. And thanks to everybody for attending. And we'll bid you good night.
Thank you.
Bye.